Hey, we're going to make a short video on totalitarianism. I've actually made a couple of these, and one thing after another would turn out, and they just didn't turn out the way they should have. And I'm already running into some problems with my pen, so let me swap that thing out. And let's try it again. Totalitarianism. And if you are studying anything about modern wars like World War II specifically, this is definitely a term you need to be familiar with because this describes the kind of leaders that we're battling against during World War II, specifically people like Adolf Hitler, um, Benito Mussolini, and even people we were allied with, such as Joseph Stalin. And there have been other leaders involved that use this: Fidel Castro, North Korea, China, Mao Zedong, people like that. And obviously, totalitarianism is a very unique thing. This is a type of government, a special kind of government, specifically, and it's unique to the 1900s and beyond. And it's really important to understand that because a lot of different factors or components have to work together in order to make totalitarianism what it is. And those things just didn't exist before the 1900s. So let's break down this word just a little bit here. If I take the word total plus authoritarian plus the term ism, ism, ism is a fancy suffix for ideology or a program. Or maybe I could even use the word system. Like if I say the word militarism or nationalism, we're talking about a way of a life or a process or a system or a set of ideas that revolve around having a strong military or having a lot of pride in your country. That's what isms are. Authoritarian usually refers to some sort of dictator. Um, and dictators are typically very, very in control. Authoritarian governments really kind of micromanage all aspects of life. And usually that's most easily associated with dictators. But, it doesn't have to be. It could be an oligarchy or it could be other things. But for what we're talking about, it's dictator. And when we talk about total, we're talking about complete. So we're talking about a program that is focused on complete control. And usually that complete control is to back up a specific person like a dictator. That makes sense? It's pretty easy so far. Okay, now let's talk about these traits and why they're unique. And once again, I want to throw out some names. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini are all really favorite people, or famous people, I shouldn't say favorite, famous people that I think about when I start talking about totalitarianism because they're really the people who, I should say, pioneered the idea. I'm going to put the word example right there, okay? Examples: Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini. So let's talk about these 5 different ideas. And all these ideas get funneled into these factors. Five key factors. Now, I like to use yellow to bring attention to important things, like the word totalitarianism. But I want to bring attention to these factors. And I also want to bring attention to each and individual one of those factors. And the first one I'm going to make comment of is how a good totalitarian government, and they're never really good, but I mean one who follows the traits or the factors, is one who knows how to control the education system. Now, why is this important? Because this is how you brainwash the youth. See, older generations, they may not rebel and speak out, but they typically know what life was like before you took over if you're a dictator. Well, if you are smart and you want to really maintain control, you go back to the youngest generation and you teach them the things from youth that you want them to know. For instance, North Korea, their dictator um, has instilled within their education system that he's literally a descendant of a god. People grow up thinking that this leader of theirs is a descendant of gods. Now, how do you fight against a god? That's pretty. That's a pretty big tall order for somebody who wants to rebel or who wants to look at the world and say, "Oh, this could be better." No, this guy's God. How do you do that? So when you control the education system early on, you start changing or brainwashing your young people to think a certain way that's going to support what you want to do. In the case of Adolf Hitler was very, very smart in trying to initiate some of his hateful rhetoric about other races into the education system because that just allowed this new generation to grow up and see the world that he saw. And of course, it made them easier to buy into what he bought into, and it also made it easier for them to do the things that they were going to be asked to do or forced to do because it was part of their value system at this point. So education system, that's a big one. And widespread education didn't really exist like we know it now in the before the 1900s. So that's why it's one of those things that really didn't have a big impact until later on. It's just like control the mass media. Now, I know that we all watch TV, at least old people watch TV. I guess I'm an old person. Here's my beautiful TV with my bunny ears. But most of you guys are probably on your newfangled Apple Watches and your laptops and your Chromebooks and your whatever they are, and you are streaming movies and all the other stuff that go along with mass media. Well, if you control the internet and the only thing people see is what you want them to see, that gives you a huge advantage over people in terms of free thought and getting information and coming up with different points of view. If you can control that, nobody has the ability or the knowledge or the resource it takes to eventually overthrow you or come up with a different opinion than what you give them. That's a big deal. So controlling people's the information, just like when it comes to the learning we do in school, controlling all forms of education. You control the newspapers. You control the TV stations. You control what people learn on the internet. You have complete control. And once again, that gives you a huge advantage. Control the army. That's another really important factor if you want to be a totalitarian. And the reason is, how do you stand against somebody who's got all the tanks and who's got all the planes and all the rockets and all the weapons? Good luck, because those people have a tank. They have weapons. They have airplanes. They will bomb you. They will shoot you. So having control of the army gives you a huge advantage. And it really allows you to put down widespread rebellions. It allows you to go through neighborhoods and make sure people are intimidated. Control of the army gives you a lot of power. But you know, a totalitarian or any dictator typically rules with something like fear. And if you really want to make people scared, it's usually the things they don't know about that are the scariest to them. So any proper dictator who wants to have total control is going to have his own secret police force. In the case of Nazi Germany, that would have been the Gestapo. And this police force is a lot different than the police force now we have. People sometimes will get angry and they'll film the police, and there's riots sometimes of people mad that police are doing this and that. But for the most part, generally speaking, policemen are really there to help us. I know there's always a few bad apples here and there, but our country is much different than these countries would have been because these police forces weren't there to help you. They were there to terrify you. They were enforcers. And they might come in middle of the night, grab you out of your bed, and next thing you know, nobody's ever heard of you again. Now that's terrifying. If you speak out, or you write a newspaper article, or if you're protesting, and then you disappear, how are your friends and your family going to look at that? Trust me, they're going to be a little less anxious to speak out against you at that point. So instilling fear is an important piece of maintaining that total control. And the last thing I'm going to list is something called a larger-than-life persona. I'll spell that for you. Larger-than-life persona. And we're going to call this a cult of personality, where you have a personality that is so big and just everywhere, people can't deny your existence. Nazi Germany, Joseph Stalin, Mao in China, Castro in Cuba, all these dictators were able to create an environment where people were terrified to do anything because they felt like they were always being watched. So if you go to somebody's home, more than likely, they're going to have a picture everywhere. They have them they have a billboard on the streets. They have literature everywhere. Everywhere you go, on the money, sometimes they'll print their faces. These people are everywhere. Picture, look at me, look at me. Hey, more likely, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at you. And that whole mentality is terrifying because now you feel like you're always being watched. And not only are people reporting on you like your children because they've been brainwashed, no longer are people afraid to speak out because they'll be arrested, run over by the army, or taken away. But now they feel like they're constantly being watched by somebody. You can't even go to the bathroom without looking up and seeing a picture of Adolf Hitler staring at you, saying Heil Hitler. This whole larger-than-life persona puts that dictator in everybody's home in their face all the time. So add all these together, these key factors help create a specific, unique kind of authoritarian government, dictators who had complete and total control, and every fiber of life in that society is controlled and managed in a way to support that totalitarian government. If you have any questions, obviously send me a message or Google it because there's lots of good information. That's one of the wonderful things about our country is we don't have control of the mass media. You can find information on your own. This is just an introduction to totalitarianism. If you have any questions, like I said, there's plenty of sources to look for, and I hope this was able to help you out a little bit. Thank you.